Starseed, stop what you are doing right now. What you are about to hear is not just another spiritual message that scrolls across your screen and vanishes into the dawn like so many others. It is a call, and calls like this one do not repeat themselves twice in the same way. There is, at this very moment, an energetic window open before you. Not a pretty metaphor, not a catchy phrase to grab your attention, but a real condition of alignment between three forces that rarely meet at the same time. The readiness of your soul, which has been polished by years of silence, doubt, and searching. A dimensional path opening like a sliver of light between two worlds, and your decision, right now, to keep watching or to close this transmission and move on, as if nothing had happened. This combination is not common. It does not happen every day, nor every month, nor to every person. And that is exactly why, if you have reached this point, some part of you already knows that this is no coincidence. Think for a moment about how many times you felt you were about to understand something important about yourself, but the insight slipped through your fingers before you could grasp it. How many times a conversation, a dream, or a sentence read at random seemed to point to a greater truth, but the moment passed and the clarity dissolved like fog in the sun. These windows open and close. They do not warn when they are about to close for good. And it is precisely this type of window that is before you now, pulsing, waiting for a response that only you can give. There is nothing wrong with doubting what you are feeling. Doubting is part of the awakening process. But completely ignoring what your body, intuition, and inner silence are signaling is different from doubting with awareness. It is wasting an alignment that took a lifetime to form. Perhaps you have heard the term last chance before in other contexts, and perhaps this expression has lost its power from being used so emptily. But here it must be understood with precision, because the meaning is neither dramatic nor apocalyptic. It is structural. Last chance does not mean your life will end if you do not act now, nor that the universe will punish you for hesitating. It means that a specific spiritual cycle, built slowly throughout your entire existence, is approaching its closing point. Each spiritual cycle has a silent beginning, a long period of maturation, often painful, often lonely, and a moment of harvest. You are now at the moment of harvest for a cycle that began much earlier than you imagine. Perhaps it began in a childhood marked by feeling different from other children. Perhaps it began in a loss that completely reorganized the way you see the world. Perhaps it began in a period of existential void that you could never quite explain to anyone, because words felt too small for the magnitude of what you were feeling. If this harvest is ignored now, the soul is not abandoned, is not punished, and does not cease to evolve. It continues its path because spiritual evolution never stops. But the price of delaying is real. It will be necessary to traverse an entirely new cycle, with its own pains, its own detours, its own time of maturation, before an alignment as precise as this one forms again. This may mean months. It may mean years. It may mean a new sequence of difficult experiences, repeating patterns that you are already tired of living, just to rebuild, bit by bit, an opportunity similar to the one before you now. That is why this message does not ask for haste out of fear. It asks for presence out of lucidity, to understand the value of what is at stake before deciding with full awareness whether you will keep listening or turn away and restart this entire journey from scratch at some future and uncertain moment. And what exactly does this window deliver to those who decide to cross it? It is not a spectacular revelation. It is not a lightning bolt striking from the sky. It is not a voice announcing ready-made answers in golden letters. It is something more subtle and at the same time deeper, a clarity that settles slowly like the morning light entering through a gap in the curtain upon the question that has accompanied you forever. You know which question this is. You do not need anyone to name it for you. It is that issue which resurfaces during sleepless nights, which appears disguised in other smaller questions, which you have already tried to resolve in 1,000 different ways, by changing jobs, moving to a new city, ending relationships, starting therapies, reading book after book, and which even so remains there, pulsing softly, waiting for an answer that never fully arrives. This clarity that is about to unfold is not an explosion of instant understanding. It is more like unlocking a door that has been jammed for years. At first, it seems that nothing is moving, and suddenly, without dramatic effort, the door gives way, and the path appears. It is this type of silent turning point that is reserved for those who cross this window with true attention. A search that has consumed years of your mental energy, that has stolen nights of sleep, that has made you repeatedly question whether you were on the right path, finally begins to find its point of rest. Not because someone gave you an answer from the outside, but because something within you which already knew was finally authorized to speak. Ignoring this transmission, on the other hand, is not neutral. Prolonging the exposure to the same doubts, to the same state of waiting, to the same feeling of always, almost understanding but never quite getting there, this has a real emotional cost. It is the cost of continuing to carry unanswered questions while time passes, while the years accumulate, while the energy that could be used to flourish continues to be spent on rumination and uncertainty. And it is exactly here that you may recognize yourself more strongly than at any other moment of this transmission, because this message was not written for just anyone. It was written for those who are tired, not with a fleeting fatigue, but with an accumulated exhaustion from trying to explain themselves to people who will never fully understand what is going on inside. It was written for those who have already been called too intense, too sensitive, strange, different, sometimes with affection, sometimes with contempt disguised as a joke. It was written for those who persist even without knowing exactly why they persist, for those who continue seeking meaning even when no one around them seems to ask the same questions. And it was written, above all, for those who are ready, even with fear, even with doubts, even without guarantees, for a transformation that has already been prepared for a long time, silently, in the background of your own life. Now it is necessary to undo a belief that has likely accompanied you for years, perhaps decades, the belief that you are late. Late in relation to those who had an easier life. Late in relation to those who seem to have found their path earlier. Late in relation to the expectation you created for yourself at some moment in the past about where you should be now. This belief must be rewritten because it was never true. Nothing in your trajectory has been wasted. Each detour that seemed like a mistake, each door that closed in your face without explanation, each relationship that ended leaving you more confused than before, each phase of emptiness in which you felt you were wasting time, all of this, without exception, functioned as a slow process of frequency adjustment. You were not losing your way. You were being tempered, like metal that needs to pass through the fire before becoming a blade. The feeling of failure that may have accompanied some of these moments was not a sign that you were doing something wrong. It was the inevitable side effect of growing beyond the understanding of the people around you, and sometimes beyond your own understanding at that moment. Those who grow too much, too fast, or in a way different than expected, often feel they are failing simply because there is no ready-made map for the path they are traveling. But the absence of a map does not mean an absence of direction. It only means that your path is yours, unique, unrepeatable, and that it was being built stone by stone to bring you exactly to this moment, to this transmission, to this page that you decided not to close. And from now on, some changes begin to manifest, not as distant promises for an uncertain future, but as movements that may already begin to settle into your way of existing in the world. The first of these is a new ease in expressing your own truth. That sensation of swallowing words, of keeping opinions to yourself for fear of judgment, of over-softening what you truly feel so as not to bother anyone. This begins to lose strength. Not overnight in an abrupt way, but like a voice that gradually regains volume, until one day you realize that you are no longer editing yourself all the time before you speak. The second change is a sharper discernment regarding people and relationships. You begin to notice with more speed and less doubt when a relationship is aligned with who you are and when it is merely draining your energy in the name of a habit or a fear of being alone. This does not mean that all the relationships in your life will suddenly collapse. It means that your ability to distinguish what nourishes from what exhausts will become clearer, faster, more reliable. And this in itself is already a powerful form of emotional protection that you build for yourself. The third change is the gradual reduction of the influence of doubt over your decisions. That inner voice that always questions, that always finds a but for any step you think about taking, begins to lose space to a calmer, firmer voice, one that knows how to recognize when something is right, even without having all the answers guaranteed beforehand. These three changes are neither passing phenomena nor temporary emotional spikes. They are permanent reconfigurations in the way your consciousness operates in your day-to-day life, small but profound, like the difference between walking against the wind and walking with it blowing at your back. And perhaps the most important promise of this entire transmission is this: you will no longer need to carry this journey alone. For a long time, perhaps you have felt that you were traveling this path in isolation, surrounded by people who love you, but who cannot truly keep up with the depth of what you experience inside. This sensation of spiritual loneliness, even while surrounded by people, is one of the most silent pains that exist, because there is no way to explain it without seeming to be exaggerating or complicating something that in the eyes of others seems simple. But as your frequency stabilizes in this new state, you begin to attract, not by chance, not by luck, but by resonance, people and experiences compatible with who you are becoming. Conversations that finally make sense, encounters that seem to have been arranged beforehand, even without any actual planning, spaces where you do not need to explain yourself all the time, because the understanding is already there, present without effort. To preserve this state in the coming days, it is not necessary to do anything extraordinary. There are no complicated rituals nor rigid rules to follow. It is enough to continue paying attention to the small signs, to the synchronicities that once seemed like coincidences and now begin to gain another weight, to the intuition that becomes clearer when you stop trying to control it, to the sensation of the lightness that arises when you choose to act from truth rather than acting from fear. If this message has touched a part of you that already knew, even before you finished hearing all of this, leave it recorded in the comments, in your own words, in your own way. Share it with someone you feel is also going through this same kind of silent awakening, because sometimes the right person just needs to hear that they are not alone in this. And if you felt that this transmission made sense to you, like and subscribe, not as an automatic gesture, but as a conscious way of saying, I am here, I have chosen to participate, I did not let this window close without passing through it.